Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started with today's class. So as I mentioned earlier, we'll have a special class now. This is to compensate for Monday's class, which will be missed due to the quiz starting off. So after this class is over, around 2:30, you can start your lab. And as I mentioned earlier, the lab that you'll be doing today is basically the the building a voltage source and a current source. Okay, so you'll change the load and you'll show that even as you change the load, the voltage or the current needs to be the same. Okay, now today what I want to do is basically to look at a few a few circuits. In fact, we have been looking at a few circuits, right? And I will just continue with a few more circuits before we move to the other topics. And the purpose of these, so the thing is, there are thousands of circuits which are built using op amps, and obviously it's not possible for us to go through even a reasonable subset of them. But some of these circuits, as we go through them, they give us a fairly good idea of what are the things that we need to look for, how do we analyze op-amp based circuits, and how do we deal with them. Okay. Now today I want to start off with a a very important aspect of a circuit that we have already seen. Okay. So for example, the non-inverting amplifier. Okay. So let me call it as the effect and mitigation of bias current in non-inverting amplifiers. So this non-inverting amplifier, we have been looking at it for quite some time. So what is a non-inverting amplifier? You give the input at the plus terminal and you have a feedback resistor and another resistor R1. Let's call this as Vout. And we also know the gain, which is basically 1 plus RF by R1. So this we already know. Now here, first of all, there is going to be, so today what we're going to see is what happens when you have an input bias current here. Okay. Now we have always assumed that this input bias current is going to be 0, and that's how we have done our calculations. Correct. But now let us say the input bias current is non-zero. All right. Now our Vin, let us say it is able to supply this current IB2. Correct. But then what happens to the output voltage here? So the current that flows in here, or rather the current that flows through this one, right, is basically going to be what? This current is going to flow through this side and this side, right? So we can write that the current that flows here, let's call it I1. I1 is basically Vin by R1, and you also have IB1, and therefore Vout is basically nothing but Vin by R1 plus IB1 multiplied by RF. So basically, you're going to have an error term of, let's say, Vin times RF by R1. So this plus, let's say, Vin, right? So you're going to have Vout is equal to Vin into 1 plus RF by R1, which is actually what you require, plus an additional term, which is the undesired term, which is equal to IB1 times RF. Correct. Now, this is basically going to be an undesired one. This is going to be an error in the output voltage. Why is this error coming in? This error is coming in because of the small input bias current which is there in the op amp, right? Now, this error, it can also vary over temperature, correct? So as your temperature changes, your input bias current will also change, and IB1 times RF is an error that is going to change. So for example, let us say you're putting your feedback resistor at 1 mega ohm, and let's say your IB1 is some 100 nanoampere roughly. How much is the error that is going to be there? So 10 raised to minus 7 into 1 raised to plus 6. So you're going to have 0.1 volt error. This is a fairly large value, especially if you're looking at some very precise precision applications where you want to amplify signals in a very precise way. And let's say you're counting your single millivolts. Here you have an error of 100 millivolt, right? So how to take care of this? The solution to this actually turns out to be a little simple, which is basically you put a resistor, let's call it R3 here, or let's say R2, right? And this is the rest of the circuit as before. This is R1 going to ground RF, and let's say this is V out, and let's say your V in is going to get connected to this one. Now there are two things which happen here, right? That so let us say if you connect something like this, then you are inverting. Sorry, just give me a moment. So what happens is you are basically creating a path for your IB to flow. Okay. So if this is going to establish IB, you are also trying to, of course, here the IB will also flow like this, but this R2, okay, yeah, I think I took a, okay, this is indeed the case for, the input bias current. Now, in order to kind of, help with this bias current problem, right? Sometimes what people do is basically to, sometimes they will try to put a DC block capacitor like this. Okay, but that also will not typically work out much. Now, so that is a problem with non-inverting thing. So let us look at the inverting thing. I just want to, sorry, I should have started off with the inverting amplifier. So let's say this is R in and this is V in, right? Now, earlier, this is your inverting amplifier, right? Now, in your inverting amplifier, now again, you have the problem that this input bias current will have to flow through, it kind of flows through both your R1 as well as your R. I mean, it can come from your output side as well as this one. So this is, sorry, this is 0 volt because of the negative feedback loop. And because of the negative feedback loop, you will, this will be 0 volt here, and you'll have the current coming in, which will go out, right? Then if you do a KCL here, you see that, IB1 is basically an error that you're going to get in your output. Now, in order to prevent that, a solution that is given is basically just to put a resistor, let's call it as R3 here, to ground. Now, what is the job of this R3? This R3 basically, there is a, let's say IB2 flowing in here. So of course, there is going to be an offset current also, but nominally, let us say IB1 equal to IB2 equal to some IB, right? Your V out can be written as, let's just take the example of, you're not connecting the input. We'll just, ground it now just to understand it. By superposition, you can always put an, you can put the input and then you can take the results, right? So for an inverting amplifier, what happens? So IB1 is drawn through Rn, right? And therefore, it can be written as IB times RF minus R3 times 1 plus RF by Rn. Okay. Now, if you select R3 to be such that Rn parallel to RF, then what will happen is the effect is basically cancelled out. Okay. Now, at the end of the day, what happens is you also have an offset current, which is IB1 minus IB2 mod. Now, the error will turn out to be, V out will turn out to be only IOS times RF. Okay. Now, even in the inverting amplifier case, so let us say instead of connecting the input, I should have probably continued like that. Let us say in this case, I'm just grounding this for the sake of, looking at what happens due to the bias current. Now, instead of grounding it, if I put, let us say, an R3, or what did I say, R2, let's just keep R3. Now, what happens is this node potential basically becomes IB2 times R3, right? And therefore, this IB2 times R3 appears here also. So that extra current kind of comes from through R1 rather than RF, and therefore the effect of the input bias current gets cancelled out. Okay, so you will see that in most of the practical implementations, you will see that this R3 is kind of connected to the ground, such that the bias current flows, and this is used to cancel the thing. Of course, you are left with this IOS times RF, but this IOS times RF current is a very much, almost like one order of magnitude smaller than what you would otherwise get. Okay. All right. So now,
sir.
Yeah, tell me.
Sir, what is this IB here?
Okay, so here, if you look at the input bias current, see, you can take an IB is nothing but IB1 plus IB2 divided by 2, the average value of the bias currents.
And sir, IOS is
IOS is the input offset current. Input offset current is the difference between the two bias currents. So ideally, you want both to be the same, correct?
yes,
you
sir.
want IOS1 to be equal to IOS2, but that doesn't happen, right? There will be some small difference which is there. So that delta is basically the offset current, and the average value is taken to be the bias current.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay, all right. Now I also want to take up the another thing, which is basically using single supply op amps. All right. Now, what is single supply op amp? Right now, in your in your lab, as well as you are using a dual supply op amp where you are using plus 15 volt and minus 15 volt. Correct. Now, suppose I tell you that you can only use a unipolar supply. Okay. Let us say, for example, you have only a plus 9 volt battery and a ground. All right. Let's say you are using some robotics board you are designing, or some circuit somewhere where you just use one single 9 volt battery, and let's say you're powering the entire system, and you don't want to get into the whole thing of dual supply, bipolar supplies, and grounding and all those things. Let's say there are certain cases where you're stuck to only a single supply. All right. Now, if you are using a single supply, how will you design your circuits? Okay. Now, earlier I told you that because the power supply is plus or minus 15, the op amp, let's say this is your V in, right? This is your V out. So the op amp's open loop response would be something like this. It has a very high gain, kind of goes like this, and then it saturates at plus 15 volt and minus 15 volt. Correct. Now, when you put feedback, basically what happens is that let us say you put some feedback so that you get a little linear operation, you kind of get something like this, right? With a certain slope, which is basically the gain. Gain is nothing but your V out by V in, which is the slope of this particular line. Correct. Now here we are, because it is plus or minus 15, even if let us say you take your op amp and for example, this non-inverting amplifier, you just connect it like this, it works fine, right? Or even for that matter, if you just give in an inverting amplifier like this, or in a non-inverting amplifier, let us say you just give an AC signal without any DC bias also, it ends up working fine, right? But suppose you have only a single supply. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, inside your op amp, you are going to have some transistors. Let us say you are having a NPN transistor pair. This is what is called as a differential pair. We will look at differential pairs and differential circuits a little later, but this is how it will look like. You have two transistors, Q1 and Q2, with a current source at the bottom, or you will also have something like you have two PNP transistors right? And something like this. Okay. Now, if you go and connect, let us say this is VCC and you have some bunch of circuits and then you have ground, right? If you're going to connect 0 volt here, then basically this, you will have a very large negative. I mean, you're kind of going to set the voltage at this point. So for PNP, maybe it is a little possible, but then in an NPN transistor, let's say if you're giving 0 volt here and this is also 0, now Q1 and Q2 are off. Correct. So if you look at the op-amp data sheet, they will tell you what is the range over which you can use your op-amp. Okay. So typically they will say you can use from, let's say, V minus plus 0.5 volt to V plus minus 0.3 volt or 0.5 volt. That is to say, if you're using a minus 15 volt supply, you can use from minus 15 plus 0.5, which is minus 14.5 volt to, let us say, 14.7 volt. This is the operational range of your op-amp. Okay. Now, the same thing, if you use 0 volt, what will happen? It will become 0.5 volt to, let's say, 9 minus 0.3, it is going to be 8.7 volt. This becomes the operating range of your op-amp. So which means that, let us say, even if you give a signal for a PNP transistor pair also, if you give a signal like this, the output will now get clipped to, you will see only one side of the signal. Okay? Almost like one half-wave rectified signal, right? You need to bias your op-amp in the proper way. In the previous case, you didn't put an explicit bias because, automatically when you give 0 volt as your DC bias, right? What you are doing is you are putting it at the middle of your supply rails. It is midpoint between plus or minus 15 volt, right? But when you have a single supply volt, you need to put it at a reasonable bias point, which basically means that, let us say, if you take let us say a non-inverting amplifier, for example, right? You need to now put bias circuits here. So let's say this is your plus terminal. You put a DC blocking capacitor, okay, and then like how we did for our BJT circuit, you have a resistor bias network, and you connect it like this, okay. And then what happens? You of course have your feedback circuit. Let's say this is some 100K, some 100K, 1K, something like this, right? So let us just use abstract numbers. Let's say this is RF by R1. And then usually you will put it to ground, but then what you do is you allow it to float. You put another capacitor here. And then you DC block the output and then you take your output. Okay. So here basically what is going to happen? It's like here you have 0 volt and then let's say you have a sinusoid. At this point, what is going to happen? Let us say you're doing R1 is equal to R2. Let us say it is VCC by 2. So you're going to have VCC by 2 and then here you're going to have your sinusoid, right? Now, because of the negative feedback loop action, this is virtual short. So this node voltage is also going to be what? At VCC by 2, right? There is DC feedback and this node also will be at VCC by 2. And, that is what you're having. And therefore, this also will be swinging. And by virtue of the feedback action, so here, let us say it will have some output common mode, or against which you'll have, A times V in, right? It will be A times V in plus VCM, and this will be VOCM. This will be VOCM minus A times V in. After you use a DC block capacitor, it will again go to 0 volt, and you'll have the gain times A times V in to be your output signal. Okay. So you need to DC block it, or this is what is called as AC coupling. And you need to establish appropriate DC signals such that it is working fine. And this is what you will do if you are using a single supply op-amp. Which is why, to avoid all this complication, people many times will try to do a bipolar supply. Any doubts, any questions?
Sir, can we, what after we got this at this negative terminal as virtual short as VCC by 2? Then sir,
Yeah.
what after that? Can you explain again?
No, by
Some is-
virtual short, this is VCC by 2.
Yes, sir.
And then you have, I mean, basically because of virtual short, whatever voltage is here, the same voltage will be here, right?
Sir, means the
Whatever we
output part. Output part, sir.
The output part, okay. The output part, what will happen is there will be an output common mode voltage. Okay. So for example, if you had your, when in your common emitter amplifier, your output common mode voltage, what VCC minus IC times RC, right? This is what is called as the output common mode voltage, VOCM. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Or we can call it as the output bias or the output DC. Okay. So let me call it as VODC. Maybe it will. All right. So you have some DC voltage at the output of your op amp around which your this thing is going to swing, right? And then you put a series DC block, I mean DC blocking capacitor, and that will take care of, you know, stripping it of its DC. All right. Now again, thirdly, I also want to basically what I'm doing is I'm just, you know, looking at different aspects of op-amp based designs. This is another quick one. Let's look at it. We have studied about integrators, right? So what is an integrator? It's basically you have a capacitor in feedback, and of course you put. So let's say we are not putting that resistor. Let's say even if you don't give a signal, let us say let Vin be equal to 0. All right. Now, in an ideal op amp, everything is fine, right? There, everything is in 0 and no problems. But in a real op amp, basically, you're going to have a offset voltage, correct? Now, because of negative feedback, what will happen? Okay, you have a resistor here, right? So because of the negative feedback, what happens? There is a VOS by R current which flows like this. Now, this constant current of VOS by R is going to flow through your capacitance. If that is going to happen, what will happen to the output voltage?
So it will increase.
It will increase linearly because it is as good as saying, I'm going to kind of pump some current into my capacitor, right? Or some this thing. So if you pump some current I0 into your capacitor, what is your capacitor voltage? Capacitor voltage is nothing but 1 over C integral of I dt, right? Plus Vc of, let's say 0 minus, or what was the initial state of the capacitor, right? So here, what is the current? You are basically going to have I0 divided by C into T plus Vc of 0, the initial voltage, correct? Now, this is nothing but a ramp signal. That is, if you have time on the x-axis, right? And let us say Vc of 0 is 0, or let's say this is your Vc of 0, and then you start providing this current, it is going to go, the voltage is basically going to go up linearly as a function of time, and this slope is nothing but I0 times I0 divided by C. This is the slope of the signal, right? So basically what will happen here is there is a current which is going in this direction. So the capacitor will get charged in this particular direction. Now the output will basically start rising. And then finally what will happen? It cannot rise indefinitely. It will go and reach
VCC.
plus VCC. Okay. Now in case VOS is having the opposite polarity, it can basically start from here, go down, and then reach minus VEE, right? So this is how your integrator will basically look like if you do not do anything, right? And therefore, one of the solutions basically is to, to do what is called as offset tuning or offset cancellation, right? Now, not only does, so let us look at how to do offset cancellation. So in last class, I think, or in previous class lab, you saw about the two offset nulling terminals, correct? So what is the offset nulling? How do you do offset nulling? So basically what happens in offset nulling is that you have a resistor here and you have a potentiometer. It is a potentiometer, and this is connected to minus VEE. Okay. So in your IC 741, I think it is pin number 1 and 8, right? You have the offset nulling terminals there. Now what happens is, if you keep changing the potentiometer, there comes a point where as you short the two inputs together, the output goes from either VCC or minus VEE to 0. So you basically slowly keep changing the potentiometer such that your output goes to 0 for an input being for the inputs being shorted. Okay. So this is what is called as offset nulling. Offset nulling meaning you put a potentiometer and you connect the wiper of the potentiometer to minus VEE, and then basically you sweep it such that you come to a place where it gives you 0 offset. All right. Now this can be done manually, and also what happens is there are some problems. Basically it solves the offset to a first order, but then there are other problems like offset itself will drift across temperature. So let us say as you keep using this particular device, after a period of time, the temperature of the IC itself will start to increase. And because of the increase in the temperature, it can lead to a larger, the offset starting to drift. Okay. So this is a problem. Okay. So there are other more advanced ways of tackling offset, but that is not very commonly done in discrete electronics. It is more done at the IC level. Okay. Now even in this, so this is one problem with integrators, right? Now the integrators will also have another problem. That is, you have the problem of input bias, right? Input bias current. Now, if you don't do anything, and if you don't give any signal also, what will happen to this this particular integrator? This integrator will start going to either plus VCC or minus VCC, because there is a small amount of bias current that this is going to take. All right. Now, because of this can go and charge up your capacitor, and it can ramp the signal to in either plus VCC or minus VCC. Now, which is why we put one RF across it, and also we put another resistor from the plus terminal to ground. Okay. So these are the things that are done in a practical integrator to handle the real-time problems that you face with op-amps. Okay. Any doubts? Any questions? Okay. So now let us move. So far we have been looking at what are called as the more linear type of applications. Okay. Now basically we did summation, difference and instrumentation amplifier I'll take on Tuesday's class. So where we will see how we can do difference of two signals. But even in a summer you can do difference of two signals if you can just flip the polarity, right, of the input signal. We saw that you can add up signals together. We looked at amplification and all those things. Okay. Now we are going to look at some nonlinear operations. Now what are nonlinear operations? Basically where the transfer function from the input to the output is not a linear transfer function at all. Okay. So now for the first class of circuits is what is called as logarithmic amplifiers. Okay. As the name suggests, this circuit is going to compute the logarithm of the particular input signal. Okay. So let us look at it. So we'll go for our usual thing, right? Let us say this is our input. Let's say this is R1. Now, because of negative feedback, this will definitely come to being in, this will come to virtual ground. And therefore, this converts it into a voltage to a current. Now, what are we interested in? We want to have the logarithm of the signal. So what we will do is we'll just put on diode here. Okay. And we will connect it like this. Now we know that the diode is a nonlinear element, and the current through a diode is what? Is Is times exponential of the, let's say this is your diode voltage. Let's call it as the Vd. So let's say it's Vd divided by some eta times the thermal voltage minus 1. Correct. Now we are interested in finding out. So because of the negative feedback, we know that this is 0 volt and this is also 0 volt, right? Now, if we kind of, if we the voltage of the diode is this eta is 1 for a silicon diode and 2 for germanium diode. So let us say we use a silicon diode, and then the voltage of the diode is well into its conductive region. So then what you can do is you can approximately say this is Is times exponential of Vd by, let's say, Vt. Okay. So eta is 1 for silicon diodes. All right. Now, what are we interested in? V out is nothing but minus Vd. And what is Vd here? Vd is nothing but it is Vt times logarithm of I minus logarithm of Is, which is nothing but Vt times log of I by Is. Correct. So this can basically be written as what? Vt times log of Vin divided by R1 minus log of Is. Now, of course, Is becomes kind of a constant at a given temperature. Basically, this is a logarithmic amplifier where it has a constant offset term and a scaling term. Okay, so this is a scaling factor and there is a small offset term which is there. But other than that, this amplifier basically gives you a output which is proportional to the logarithm of your input. Okay. Now here there is one more problem. This Is is a very strong function of temperature. Now what to do about this? Because Is is a temperature dependent term, as Is changes, what will happen is that this offset term also keeps changing. So you cannot say, okay, I'm going to just calibrate at one point. I know this is the offset term. I'm basically, your V out can be taken as some minus K, some constant times, log of my V in minus another, let's say this is K1 and this is K2, right? It doesn't become a constant term K2 because this K2, which is log of Is, is now a very strong function of temperature. As your temperature starts moving around, your constant term also keeps moving around. So whole purpose is basically lost, right? Now, how to compensate for the temperature? So we come up with another circuit. Now, the best way to, compensate one temperature varying, temperature sensitive device is to kind of use the same device or a similar device to compensate for the temperature. So let us say this is our diode D1. Let's call it as VD1, right? This is our Vin. So, okay, this is R1. Now let us call this as VO1. Now what we are going to do is basically we are going to use one more diode here. Okay, let's call it D2, and let's say it is going to have the diode potential VD2 like this. Okay. Now at this point, of course, in order to bias this diode, you need to pump some current. Let's call it as I3. And this goes to one more amplifier, which is nothing but a non-inverting amplifier. Now this R1 is kind of split into two components. Let's say R1 and RT. I'll explain to you why that is coming in. So this happens to be the circuit. Now let us try to understand how this works. So this node voltage is V01, this node voltage is V2. Okay. Now we already know what is V01. What is V01? It is minus of VD, which is nothing but minus of VT times. So let us just include this eta also, so that it is generic across all diode types. So let us say this is eta times VT multiplied by log of V in divided by R1. Okay, you have two R1s here. Okay, fine. I think it is intentionally we are doing it like that. So V in my R1 minus log of IS. Okay. Now, similarly, the voltage across the diode D2, okay, VD2 is going to be what? VD2 is nothing but eta times VT times log of the I that is going to go into it and minus log of IS. Okay. Now, what is the current that is going to flow through the D2? It is basically this current I3, correct? That is the forward current, because that current cannot, the bias current is very negligible. So you kind of, let's write it as I3, right? Now let us say these two diode, yeah.
So VD2 should be V2 minus this VO1.
Correct, that is true. But then if this is the current that is flowing through, see this I3 current cannot flow into the op amp. Okay,
Got it,
so
sir.
I am writing in terms of I3. You're right that it is V2 minus V01, which is kind of what we use as well, right? But this is what basically happens, correct? So now, if you write V2, the voltage V2, the voltage V2 can be written as what? V2 can be written as V01 plus VD2. Okay, V01 is this to ground, right? And this is VD2. So what is V2? V2 can be written as minus eta times VT log of V in divided by I3 times R1. Okay. Now this is assuming D1 and D2 are matched. Okay. So basically what happened here? V01 is this quantity, VD2 is this quantity. Let's say you're using the same diode, and let's say you're using a matched pair of diodes, which basically means that log of IS is equal to each other, or at least fairly close to each other. Okay. Now you end up with this. Now let us see what happens to V out. What is V out? V out is your final output voltage here. This is nothing but a non-inverting amplifier. So we know how to write the expression for a non-inverting amplifier, which is 1 plus RF divided by R1 plus RT times V2, right? Which is nothing but 1 plus RF by R1 plus RT times eta times VT minus sign here log of V in divided by I3 times R1. Okay. Now this is basically what you would get. Now what are you doing? By doing all this arrangement, what have we done? We have gotten rid of this log of IS term, which is a highly temperature sensitive term. Okay. So right now you are having some kind of a constant, let's say K3 times log of V in divided by some K4. Okay. Now I3 times R1 is a very known quantity. You know what current source you are putting, and you also know what is your R1. So you can always compensate for that. And this is going to be fairly consistent across temperature. Now you might ask, why do you want to have a logarithmic amplifier? Okay, what is the point of having an amplifier where the output is the logarithm of the input? Now there are some applications where the dynamic range is very large. For example, you have an application, let's say your V in goes from, let us say, the order of some few hundreds of microvolt all the way to some very large voltage. Okay. Now, many times what we do is we try to compress the dynamic range. Sometimes it may also be that, you have an input current, right? That current can go from, let us say, some 3-4 orders of magnitude. Now, in those situations, you want to kind of compress the dynamic range of the signal. And in order to do, and we know that logarithm is a very, very good way of, compressing this dynamic range. Now, again, this, diode can be replaced with a BJT. In fact, you will see circuits where you can just basically, instead of diode in feedback, you will basically see something like, you have a you ground the BJT and you basically have something like this. So here what happens, this is your, this is your VBE, right? So if you're pumping some current into this thing, there is a certain VBE that develops across the temperature, across the base emitter junction of your transistor. And this also acts as a circuit which is having a logarithmic response. Now, another major application where you use logarithmic amplifier, or rather which was used earlier, is when you want to multiply two signals. Now, how do you multiply two signals? You convert them into the logarithmic function and then you add them, and then you design what is called as an anti-logarithmic amplifier. Now, what is an anti-logarithmic amplifier? Obviously, you want the inverse function, you want the e to the power of function that you want, right? Now, how will you get the e to the power of function? Basically, here we converted the voltage to a current, and the current was passed through a diode, which generated a voltage which was logarithmic in nature. Now, here what you need to do, you basically need to convert your input voltage to a current where the current is going to be logarithmic, and that current needs to basically be converted to a voltage. Okay, so that we will see in the next class, and then we will move over to difference amplifiers and instrumentation amplifiers. Okay, so with this I'll conclude the class today, and let me just give you the problems for the lab today. So the today's lab is going to be that you have two parts to it. One is design a constant current source. Okay, so you just take plus minus 15 volt supply, nothing else is given, and let us say you need a current source whose value is, let's say the odd team will design for a current source of, let us say, 10 milliampere. Okay, and the even group will design for a 5 milliampere current source. Okay, now similarly you can have design a constant voltage source. Okay, so again you have only plus minus 15 volt coming in. The odd team can design for let us say 7 volt, and let us say the even team can design for, let us say, 10 volt. All right. So here you will have to test for the load voltages. So instead of using a potentiometer, what you will do is basically you will use different resistor values. Now you can test this for different resistor values, let's say starting from 500 ohm, 1K, 3.3K, 4.7K, and also 10K. Okay. So 10K times 10 milliamp, what would you get? Oh, that's too much. This itself is going to be a large value, right? Okay. Then let us do one thing. Instead of larger impedances, you test for what is 3.3K times 10 milliampere. You are going to have, oh, this is also very large. Is Preeti ma'am here in the call?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What are the smaller impedances we have in the lab?
From 1 ohm
100
to
ohm is there?
yes.
200 or 220 is there?
220, 270, 330, 470.
Okay. So maybe they can test for these things.
Okay, sir.
For 470 into 10 milliamp will be some 4.7 volt, right? So 4.4.
Mm.
So 4.7 volt. I think something in 600 ohm range is there.
680 ohm.
600, 700? 680
680
ohm.
ohm.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah. So you will test your current source for all these different values. Of course, I could have also dropped the current value and you could have taken a, larger resistor, right? That is also possible, but let us just try for these resistance values. Same way here, load resistance, you can try, let us say the 10 volt by 500, 10 volt by 500 amps, or 500 ohm, how much will you get? 10 divided by, let's say 470. Going to have 20 milliampere of current. I think that also can be tried. Or let's say you take from 680, 1K, 3.3K, 4.7K, and 10K. Okay. For all these different resistors, what I would like you guys to do is to basically form a table, right? So where you have your RL, okay, for different values of RL, what is the voltage or current that you have measured, right? Let's say this is measured, and then let's say this is your expected, what is the error, and then error in percentage. All right. So you need to form a table like this, and then you can design. Okay, so you can tabulate your this thing. So I don't think it will take a very long time for you to do this. These are very simple circuits, right? And you can use the 741 op amp. So I hope all of you have taken down the thing, right? So design a constant current source and a constant voltage source using the op amp based topology that we saw, and that should be good enough. Okay. Any doubts? Any questions?
Sir, here we will take, sir, we set as 0.3 volt.
You can take 0.3. Anyway, here I've given you only up to, you don't need to take it so seriously also. For 680 ohms, what will you do for constant current source? 680 ohm will give you the highest voltage. So let's say the worst case will be 10 milliamp times 680, and that will be some 6.8 volt, right? Your supply voltage is plus 15 volt, right? So you can, you have a lot of room to cover.
Yes, sir.
Answer, what is the Zener diode specification?
Now don't use a Zener, just use a resistive divider.
Okay, sir.
Okay, no need to use a Zener, just use ma'am, Zener diodes are there. They are there, no, in this thing. But then you have to look at the
Yes.
data sheet. Yeah, maybe you can try to use, first do it with the resistor divider, and then you can try to use it. So I think it's a 5.6 volt Zener, right? What we have in lab.
Yes, sir.
5.6. Okay. Yeah, so maybe you can tell them the part number, they can try to find it out. So either way you can do, okay? So whether you want to use a Zener diode, you try to use, or else you first do it using a resistive divider. And then later, if you have some time, you can experiment with the Zener diode.
Sir,
All right? Yeah.
sir,
Okay, sir.
what is the advantage with Zener diode?
What is the advantage with Zener diode is that, so, okay. So what happens is, this is what is called as a voltage regulator, right? Now, for a voltage regulator, you have some external supply from which you are giving a certain regulated output supply. So let us say, for example, you have plus minus 15 volt coming in, right? And let's say you need to give plus 10 volt or plus 7 volt or something. Now, what can also happen is your VCC, although here it is given as a constant in your lab, you take it to be a constant value because you set it. This 15 volt can also be variable. Okay, so even in satellite applications and so on, You have nominally a certain voltage, but as the battery kind of starts discharging, or maybe the solar panels are going to go up and down, this thing will start varying. This VCC, this plus 15 can become plus 14, plus 13, and so on. Okay. So in that case, what will happen? This output voltage, what you're designing, will also change. Okay. This is typically the case in any battery operated system, even in your cell phones. Let's say when your battery is full, it has some voltage, but as your battery starts discharging, its value will keep coming down, right? And not only that, sometimes when you turn on some heavy load and current is drawn, due to the internal resistance of your battery, the voltage will kind of drop, correct? So typically these voltage regulators are used on when they are looking at they are being fed from an unregulated voltage, and from that unregulated voltage they give you a regulated constant DC supply. So when you want to have, let us say, a constant 7-volt supply, even though your your VCC is changing, then you go for a very good reference like a Zener diode. You understood?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay, guys. So you can get started with the lab, and we'll meet again on Monday evening. Maybe you can let me know a time, and you can use it. So please, there are a lot of op-amp based circuits. So please do go through some of the circuits that are there in, let's say, some of the problems that are there in Cedra Smith or even Sergio Franco. You can just look at them. I still haven't taught some portions in that chapter 2 of this thing, because we still haven't had the time. But the other things can be taken. So as I mentioned, only what was covered till Wednesday is included. Whatever I taught today will not be included. Okay. So you can practice some of the problems, so that you are well aware of, you're familiar with how to handle op-amp based circuits. Okay. All right. So thank you, and you can continue with your lab.
The same pattern as the last quiz, right?
Yes, it will be the same pattern.
Thank you.